Stephanie O'Neill reports from Santa Barbara.
Of Santa Barbara's 126 sworn police officers, Greg Hans is one of the few, if not the only, who used to be a garbage man.
You know, and I used to tell people I wouldn't want to be a garbage man anywhere else in Santa Barbara, and I wouldn't want to be a police officer anywhere else.
And why not? Spanning the 15 miles of coastal country north of Ventura to the Gaviota Coast, it's one of the most beautiful counties in the state.
It's a place where the mountains meet the ocean. You can drive 10 minutes and be at the beach. You can drive 15 minutes and be up at the top of the Santa Ynez Mountains. It has a really nice feel. It's like a big, small town.
A small town with big prices. The beauty that makes Santa Barbara a destination is forcing out those people who people in need most.
Santa Barbara has become the place I work and not the place I live, as is with the majority of the firefighters in Santa Barbara.
Like so many other firemen in Santa Barbara County, Chris Mills can't afford to live here, even though this is his hometown.
I can remember being at elementary school and seeing, Engine 6 from the city fire department roll down Cliff Drive, and, being a little kid with my hands up on the chain link fence saying, I'm going to work here, I'm going to live here, this is going to be my job. It was a tough decision to make, to say goodbye to Santa Barbara.
It's a real estate reality that's affecting the day-to-day duties of many of Santa Barbara's first responders.
Almost on a daily basis, it affects me with, our staffing levels going down because people can't afford to live here in this town, or it's not worthwhile for them to drive here. Since January 1 of 2006, 4 to 5 officers that I work with in the patrol division have left, mostly to go to work in the area south of us where they live.
How many folks who are your colleagues inside the fire department are actually living within the city of Santa Barbara?
8 people that own homes in the city of Santa Barbara right now out of the 86 firefighters that are on duty.
And that's compounded by Santa Barbara's unique geography.
It's a problem for Santa Barbara with its what we call geographic isolation. There's one road in and there's one road out. And so with a major disaster, quite frankly, if I'm off duty, I'm going to be in Solvang taking care of my family.
And because first responders, police and fire, depend on each other, a weakness in one department can create a weakness in the other.
Good afternoon, City of Santa Barbara Fire Department.
We work hand in hand. We're public safety personnel. We rely on each other. And with the decrease in staffing that the police department has, we've noticed at the fire department a compromised ability to do our job.
Dispatch, do you have an emergency? Yeah, can you hold on a second?
I, as a captain, get on the radio and request a police unit. The statement that is made almost every day is, we're attempting to clear a unit. And what that means is they're looking for a police officer to get off of a call to come help us.
Which begs the question, whether you live in this coastal town or are just passing through, what if you dialed 911 and no one came?
It proved to be a very big problem when the La Conchita slide was. I mean, people were literally taking the boat up from Ventura to get to work. I know Cottage Hospital had a very large percentage of their workforce who couldn't get to work.
Brian Kernal is not a first responder. He's an architect and the president of the Economic Community Project. His group's 2005 survey of the South Coast and its future needs proves something he already suspected. The commute is killing the community.
So 10 years from now, you have a workforce where nobody can own a home. And I don't think this community begins to understand what the potential consequences of that are.
You can't telecommute when you're a police officer. You got to be there in the black and white. You got to be there in person.
Though Santa Barbara has long been home to the rich and famous, it's also had a thriving middle class. But more than 30 years ago, an offshore oil well erupted, spilling more than 100,000 barrels of crude oil into the channel. That environmental disaster ignited a slow growth movement with a tightening of building codes and restrictions on land use. The unintended consequence of that slow growth has squeezed out not just the police and firefighters, but even families who've lived in Santa Barbara for generations.
We get up about 5:15 and try and get as much ready as possible. If we leave late, the consequences that we're late for everything.
Bye, Daddy.
Alice Reddit is one of the 17,000 Ventura County residents who commute north on the clogged 101 each day to work in Santa Barbara.
This is the town I grew up in. I was raised here, went to school here, and I never thought that I wouldn't be able to continue living here.
But even with a good job at the Housing Authority of the city of Santa Barbara, she can't. Ironically, her office sits just 6 blocks from her childhood home, and she's not alone.
Middle class folks and also critical workforce people can't live here.
Ed Moses, the director of the County of Santa Barbara Housing and Community Development Department, knows what's at stake.
If what the forecasters say come true, this place becomes a place where you have a tale of two cities, where you have nothing but the rich, the very rich, and the people and the underclass to take care of them. You no longer have Santa Barbara.
So with life-saving public servants, families with deep community roots, and young entrepreneurs drifting away, with the very character of Santa Barbara County at risk, residents here must be united in their effort to develop affordable housing for the middle class, right? Well, not exactly.
I got a notice in the mail that the county had intentions of putting 1,200 high-density homes on a beautiful piece of productive agricultural land. So myself and other neighbors in the area formed the Coalition for Sensible Planning to fight that, and so far we've been successful.
Gary Earl owns land just across the street from the proposed new development.
We recognize the need that we want to try and create affordable housing for our middle class, particularly our first responders, such as our police and our fire, our nurses. But the question is, how do you do it? It has to be solved on a local level and not at a state level. If we continue to follow the state housing mandate over the next 20 years, we'll have an additional 80,000 homes, which will bring in another 250,000 people and generate 800,000 more car trips per day, and that would be a disaster. We want to do everything we can to keep suburban Santa Barbara from becoming urban Los Angeles.
And developments for the middle class, he says, should not be the city's first priority.
People making $75,000 to $130,000 a year have choices, okay? There are people that make a lot less than that that have no choices. I think what we need to focus on most is providing affordable housing for those in the lowest income brackets.
But try to explain that to anyone who knows that the average home price in Santa Barbara's South Coast is now more than $1.2 million.
The salary that you would have to make to afford $1 million home here, which is your standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Santa Barbara, is $250,000 a year. Top step officers, somebody that say has been here like myself for 10 years, we calculated a base salary of about $77,000. The salary which we make is not enough to afford a home on the South Coast.
Santa Barbara needs to look outside the box, and they need to look at other ways of providing housing or assisting with providing housing. What? I don't know. Again, I work on a fire engine, but I'm seeing a problem, and it's only going to get worse.
And joining us now is our correspondent, Stephanie O'Neill-Noh. Again, Stephanie, we're not talking about low-income housing. We're talking about affordable middle-class housing. Anybody out there building solutions now?
Well, a few are. Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara is attempting to build about 115 townhomes for nurses and hospital staff who've been priced out of the market. And they're running into a bit of community opposition. And also UC Santa Barbara is hoping to build about 236 single-family homes and townhomes for faculty who've also been priced out of the market.
But even if a community does support the building of affordable housing, it's not always that easy in a free market economy.
No, it's not, and especially when you're dealing with coastal California. Not just Santa Barbara, but coastal California up and down, the land is so expensive. So when you're trying to build truly affordable housing on pieces of property that cost millions of dollars, it's very difficult to achieve.
We've heard the phrase, the boutiquing of Santa Barbara. What's that mean, and what are the consequences?
In this case, boutiquing would mean that Santa Barbara would become more of an enclave for wealthy folks and for predominantly older folks. So you'll look into the schools, you'll see fewer children, you'll see schools closing perhaps, you'll see the character of the community really changing.
The graying of Santa Barbara.
Exactly.
Stephanie, thanks for that story.